Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson, and in this week's episode, we are taking a look at a segment from our recent Patreon live session. Now, for those of you who don't know, I run a Patreon that you guys can join up to and gain exclusive access to either 1 or 2 lives a month, dependent on the tier that you choose. If you choose the Patreon tier, that gains you access to this kind of session you're about to see, a colour and cutting theory session. And then if you're an all access Patreon, well then you get to come in on live demonstrations, colour and cut, and they run once a month for each of those sessions. So if you're an all access Patreon, you get 2 live sessions a month. If you don't catch them live though, it doesn't matter because they're all stored on Patreon for you to go back, watch, digest and take on all that information that was given in those live sessions. Now the live sessions range from around an hour all the way up to about 90 minutes for the theory sessions, but I do like to talk and I do like to answer everyone's questions, so there is a lot of stuff that we get through in those sessions. And then the cutting and colouring sessions will run between 2 and 3 hours dependent on what type of technique we're going through and what we need to cover during those sessions. So hopefully that breaks down, because lots of you have asked me, what is Patreon, how does it work, what does it mean, how do I get involved? Well, in the description down below is a link to my Patreon. Click on that link. It won't automatically sign you up. You have to choose what tier you want, either Patreon tier or all access Patreon tier, and then you can upgrade or downgrade as you like during the time. It is completely contract free. So look, it's just a way of you guys helping me as well as me helping you with a bit more detail, because ultimately I want to bring you the highest quality education that I can provide right now. And don't forget that the first 100 Patreons to my Life of Hair will get lifetime access to the Life of Hair Digital Academy when it is open, probably towards the end of this year / next year. Now, actually the only thing that's really holding it back is social distancing and getting the models in, etc. I have got so much that I want to share with you guys, and I'm just brimming with excitement to bring all these things to you. So do come and join us. If you want to just check it out for a little bit and leave, then that's entirely up to you. There is no commitment to this. I know this is kind of broken into a slight sales pitch. I do apologise, but I'm really enthusiastic about my Patreons. They are really a brilliant bunch of people. We have a Facebook page as well, a private Facebook group that you can head over and join. So listen, guys, have a wonderful time watching this episode, and don't forget, if you have any questions about this episode, then do drop it in the comments down below. This week's episode is a bit of an art class, I will say that, and in a subsequent episode I will make all this information very, very relative to you. I don't know if you caught the previous clip from the Life of Hair Live. If you didn't, then I will link that at the end of this video so you guys can catch that as well. But look, for everybody that hits that thumbs up button, leaves those comments down below, watches the entire video, all those things massively support the channel. If you don't want to become part of a Patreon, then that is totally fine by me. Of course, I appreciate each and every one of you who comes along here and absorbs the free education that I provide. I do it because I am passionate about hairdressers making more money, growing behind the chair, and eventually achieving their biggest desires, whether that's a salon owner, an educator, or just to earn a substantial amount of money being a hairdresser. There is no reason in the world, I believe, that you cannot achieve all of those things and more as a hairdresser. Have a wonderful week, and I shall see you again on Sunday for another episode of The Life of Hair. We discussed last week with this particular scenario, where we were looking, everything ends up neutral. So we've got the opposing tone. So when we've got a red colour, like we have here, this red, we know that depth of that colour is in this 5 realm here. So that is a level 5. Even though it's got no numbers or letters attached to it, it's a level 5. So does that correlate in your minds to when you're looking at a colour chart? quite often some brands will have, you know, the 6 as the brightest, 6 as the brightest red. But if you had red and wanted to make it even brighter, so I gave you red and I said, make me the brightest red. What would you do to it? Can anybody put it in the comments box what you might do to make the brightest red? So I gave you a red. We decided it was level 5 because that's where it lives on this color wheel. How do we make that even brighter? And if you're not sure, just put question marks. The reason that we think red is the brightest color is because of the way brands have positioned it over the years. And it's a little bit frustrating because all you need to do to make the brightest red is add some orange into it. As soon as you put orange into a red, which is on a level 5, you bring it up a bit, because obviously we can see here that the red sits on the level 5 in line with the red sits in line with the level 5. But to make it even brighter, we just make a red orange. Now it's not truly then a level 6, because as we discussed last week, some colours are in the middle, aren't they? So this is like the question. A lot of people put the question in last week's video, got a bit lost between the 5 and the 6 and this halfway colour. Well, if we want the brightest red, it is halfway in between in the 6 and the 5, the brightest red. So let's make an example of that. Get some red, which is quite bright anyway, this red. I mean, this is a pretty bright red. But we want to take it up a gear. In fact, we'll do a little test swipe on the paper. There we go. Now we don't want to add too much yellow to it because it will really turn it orange, but we want it to be a red orange. Now this is also, guys, when you're doing reds in the salon, for instance, and then the clients come back in and they say, oh, my red always fades orange. It always fades orange. I hate the orange way it fades. Obviously, there are some brands, it just sticks like glue, but, you know, generally red will fade to an orangey colour. And that's, you know, one of those kind of slightly insidious problems, but it can be combated, and we'll talk about how you can combat that in a minute. Right, hopefully that shows up on the screen as a brighter red. Can you guys see that as a brighter red? Looks bright on my end. I'm just hoping it looks brighter your end. This is the bright one, and then this is the one straight out of the tube. If you can see it as brighter, then just put X. Just type X in the box, in your comments box, or yeah, that's good. Cool, good. Right, that's great. I'm glad you're all seeing that. Perfect X. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Good. So you can see how that works. Right, so imagine you could now say to your client, now, you don't want your colour to fade over to the orange side anymore. I can fix that. They'd be thrilled, I'm sure. I mean, you know, this was a eureka moment to me when I first worked this out. Now, this is obviously already, let's call this our level 5 red, because by adding that little bit of yellow in there, we saw the change that came about. So I will put a bit of yellow in there just to brine it up a little bit. So remember, this is now our halfway between the two. So now we are 6.5 red orange, our brightest colour. So we're taking our brightest red. Now whatever that is in your salon, you know, doesn't matter whether it's 6.6 or whether it's 6.66 or it doesn't matter, or it's 6R or whatever your brightest red is, these rules still apply. These rules still apply. So what we're going to then do is we're going to take a little bit of our blue, tiny bit of our blue, Put that in there. Now tell me what that's going to do to it. Someone write it in the comments box. Just a tiny bit of blue. It's going to deepen it, because we said last week, didn't you remember, that it's the darkest blue. So every time we add blue into something, we deepen it, we drop it down. So it's going to deepen it. So it's going to push it to this side of red. Okay? So we'd have to say to our client, right, it's going to have a slightly darker, deeper vibe, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That is a-okay. What we need to be kind of, you know, I suppose aware of as well. So we're not going to get such a massive pop of colour, but what we're definitely going to get for our client, what we're going to give them is much more longevity and not a huge amount of change, because the blue, as Peter said, will neutralise the orange. So now we can see that that's the deepest one, and that one just falls right here on this red violet plane. So by manipulating just this quadrant, if you will, by playing around with the amount of yellow and blue, we can shift backwards and forwards through this range, creating these half shades.